Well, welcome everyone to our sixth, I believe it's number six in our series of 10 webinars today. We have a very relevant subject matter and presenters with us today. Is the tourism, special event industry has been seemingly impacted due to COVID. A lot of discussion about how that's going to recover and how we restart that. Thank you to all our SEDA members and partners who have joined us today. For those of us who are joining us for the first time, my organization is a provincial nonprofit. My name is Verona Thibault. I manage the organization, and we work to support community and economic capacity building across the province. Again, on the housekeeping, please ensure your audio and video is muted for the duration of the webinar. If you have any questions during either presentation, please use the chat function. And if there's any challenges, please text my cell phone at 306-381-3900. If there's an opportunity, we'll segue in your questions during the presentations. Otherwise, we'll present them at the end of both presentations today. The webinar will be recorded and posted on our webinar landing page within 3 business days. Now, our first presenter today, Grant McDonald, and thanks so much, Grant, for joining us. Grant is going to present first. Grant is a leader in sport and event hosting in Canada with over 28 years of experience in various leadership positions. Grant was a member of the Canadian Sport Tourism Alliance's Board of Directors, and he served as chair for several years. He now works as head of consulting with the Alliance, leading the consulting services program, and he co-developed the sport tourism assessment template. Thanks so much for joining us, Grant. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Verona, and good to be with everybody today. It's a pleasure to join you, and what we wanted to do today is talk a little bit about some past recoveries in Canada and give you the perspective and the learnings from those in order to help inform how our communities in Saskatchewan and the rest of Canada will be able to proceed out of COVID-19. So, obviously, we have been going through this crisis for the last 2+ months here in Canada. In March of this year, that is when it really took hold and impacted all of our lives, led to many work from home orders. We're also in the process now of postponing or canceling many events. Unfortunately, it was announced today that this year's Grey Cup will not happen. But the good news is that it is coming back in 2022. I know that is small consolation, having served as the general manager of the 2020 Women's World Hockey Championship, which was canceled on or postponed until 2021 on March the 7th. So the response, that period that we're now in, is an indeterminate length because of public health, because of all of the various phases that will be tailored to the public health realities on the ground in our own communities. Once we come back, hopefully it is in 2020, we will need to adapt because the recovery from this will mean that not only do we have the opportunity to look at doing things differently, but we will in all likelihood have to do things differently because of the various phases that we happen to be in over time. When we get to the resiliency phase, which is once we have a vaccine, once that is widely available, and people can get back to what normal used to be, we know that it will be a new normal. Just like after 9/11, people are now very used to the security requirements that enable us to travel by air, and that has become our new normal in travel post 9/11. We will have a new normal when we come out of COVID-19. We will be able to learn the lessons from what worked, what didn't, and how we can move forward and be even better in the future. The example that I'm going to share with you today is from Fort McMurray in Wood Buffalo region. So in your neighboring province, obviously that region has gone through some very significant challenges over the recent past. A little bit about the region that people may not know is that it has built a significant menu of outdoor and indoor sport and recreation venues, including field and stadium, baseball, track, trails, arenas, and aquatic facilities. And they really made a commitment to sport tourism back in 2014. They've also hosted some very significant events over the past number of years, including both preseason and regular season CFL games, as well as many national and some international sporting competitions. In April 2016, the commitment that had been made within the region led to the development of a sports strategic plan that covered both sport development as well as sport tourism. That went to the regional municipality of Wood Buffalo Regional Council on April 12th of 2016. As we all know, on May 3rd, there was significant wildfires, and that led to the evacuation of the entire population of Fort McMurray and significant property destruction and, unfortunately, loss of life during that evacuation. When they came out of that circumstance and when residents were allowed back on June 1st, they were faced with a very harsh reality of serving as the host community for the Baseball Canada Cup in early August, which is Baseball Canada's premier championship and has representation from all 10 provinces in Canada. So as part of the road to recovery, what we had been doing is, having worked with them in the development of this strategy during the displacement of residents from the region, that is when they had made the commitment to allocate some resources to ensure that there was staff in order to be able to welcome visitors back and to be able to help build new business, both during recovery as well as during that resiliency phase. Initially, it's about connection and empathy, making sure that we're understanding our customers' needs, what their pain points are, and how we're going to be able to work with all sectors to ensure that we can be good hosts once we are in that recovery phase. Really, we spent a lot of time assessing the situation. We needed to determine what the current state of any of those facilities was, and we needed to define what the problems were, both economically, socially, and culturally, and from a sustainability perspective. And in that case, from the wildfires, once we knew that there were venues in place that were workable and could host events again, then we needed to make sure that we could open the doors for business and welcome people, not just to the community, but into those host venues, while recognizing that socially and culturally, the community was in a lot of pain and needed to be able to heal. And this was an opportunity for sport events, in this case, to be a rallying point for the community to gather and to be able to share some of their experiences. We also spent a lot of time engaging all levels of government, ensuring that we were communicating effectively, letting provincial government as well as federal government know what the current state was, because that was evolving week to week. But the thing that we didn't know, as we don't know now in the COVID-19 situation, is when. When are we going to be able to open for business? When are we going to be able to welcome visitors once again, and where will they come from? So the lessons learned from our experience in Fort McMurray was, during the response phase, we had identified assessment, planning, and resources. Recovery was more assessment, communication, and building confidence. And during resiliency, we needed to reassess what the current state was with that new normal and then really begin to implement that strategic plan and start to build a growth strategy for the attraction and hosting of sport events, which supported various business sectors. So what's next? It really comes down to basic needs, and for anybody familiar with the hierarchy of needs, we have, in the early phases since this crisis began, it was about physiological. We needed to make sure that we had the food, the shelter, all of those basic needs in order to support our families, to ensure that they were safe and comfortable. And then it became about safety. We wanted to make sure that we were doing everything that we could, and part of that flattening the curve strategy was around staying at home, staying out of the workplace, ensuring that we weren't making the situation any worse, either for ourselves, for our families, or for the communities. We really connected with one another during this situation, as people did in Fort McMurray, to make sure that everybody was okay, connect with family, connect with friends, connect with social networks, and then building a self-esteem and then self-actualization and being able to achieve greater accomplishments that we knew was going to come later. Right now, we've progressed certainly to the safety tier, and I think a lot of us have been connecting with loved ones and social networks, but now everybody is saying, what's next? What's next? And that was the same circumstance in Fort McMurray. So during the response, we need to assess the current state of all of our host venues. Could we host the Baseball Canada Cup? Could we host in our local hotels? Could we ensure that there was the food and beverage requirements to meet the needs of visitors that are coming into town? We needed to be able to plan and adjust plans that were already in place to ensure that that we could meet the needs for the competition, but also to build a little bit of experience. And then we needed to make sure that the resources were in place, and that where they weren't in place, through Fort McMurray Tourism at the time, today it's the Wood Buffalo Economic Development Corporation, that they would be able to backfill and provide some additional concierge type services to make sure that all of those visitors knew what was available to them. The good news is, from the Baseball Canada Cup, that 62% of the spending associated with the Baseball Canada Cup came from local spending. Other Alberta was 6%, and then Other Canada was 32%. This is very typical for a national event, that most of the attendees we know will come from the local community, but to be able to see 32% of attendees at the Baseball Canada Cup in 2016 come from outside of Alberta and other parts of Canada was significant. With 515 visitors to the region just weeks after the wildfires and the return of residents to the community, the average night's stay was over $6, and the average spending per person was over $1,000. All of that led to a significant total visitor spend in the local community, which generated an incremental spend to the local economy in Wood Buffalo of almost $500,000, and within Alberta, about $750,000. All of those things are very important, because that was that GDP line, that is new money that came into Wood Buffalo, came into the province of Alberta, that wouldn't have otherwise been spent in the local market. So it was good business, and it was real business in that community when it needed it most. And it gave local businesses the confidence to be able to reopen, even if they were reopening under a limited menu or limited service. They were able to provide some degree of service to those visitors and to ensure a quality visitor experience to everybody who was coming to town. When it came to the recovery, again, more assessment. We needed to understand where Fort McMurray was at that time. Coming out of the wildfires, it had successfully hosted events and now was looking at what the next events were. We needed to communicate effectively that Wood Buffalo and Fort McMurray, more specifically, were open for business. And then we needed to instill confidence in those local businesses to be able to reopen. As well, we needed to instill confidence in the local community that they could in fact host and that they were able and equipped to do so, and needed to instill confidence in the rest of Canada that Fort McMurray could host national and international events. The next event up was the CCAA Men's Soccer Championship, which took place in November of 2016. The great news coming out of the devastation of the Alberta wildfires in 2016 was the amount of support that came from national sport organizations. Here you can see Steph Labbé, who is the goalkeeper for Canada's national women's team. And she came in to do some clinics for local youth as part of that recovery phase, because really it was about those national sport organizations that were providing their support. Provincial sport organizations are going to be a key to the success of any reintroduction of sport hosting in Saskatchewan. So they will be a key stakeholder and partner in helping to build that confidence amongst local business to be able to reopen and to be able to provide those goods and services that will ensure a quality visitor experience for everybody who is coming into our communities. When it came to resiliency, once we had hosted a few events in Fort McMurray, then we needed to reassess where we are now. So this was at the end of 2016. We knew that we could host, and we had proven that we could host national events. Now we knew that we needed to reassess where we were at that point in time. So when it comes to any crisis such as this, we need to be able to reassess once again and then start to implement that strategic plan that had been developed and approved just weeks prior to the Alberta wildfires. And that all was leading toward business growth. What we don't know now for COVID-19 is where we will be and when we will be at this resiliency phase, but we need to be ready for it. So we need to make sure that we have the resources in place and that we're ready doing our work over these weeks and months to ensure that state of readiness once we do open the doors for business once again. In Fort McMurray, that resulted in, and I mentioned the support of Canada Soccer immediately following the Alberta wildfires, but Volleyball Canada as well. They had awarded the hosting rights during the fall of 2016 when we were in that recovery period, the hosting rights for the 2017 U21 Pan Am Volleyball Cup, which was hosted at Keano College in May of 2017, almost a year to the day following the Alberta wildfires, and it was the first international sporting event that was hosted in the region. All of this to say that you need to be able to have the plans for each of those phases to understand what that's going to look like in terms of hosting opportunities. This is a moving target. We know what the problem might be today, but that problem may change tomorrow. So we need to be able to adapt and to respond to all of those evolving and shifting criteria, which can include time, can include financial resources, but really having the human resources to be able to respond and react can ensure that we can build partnerships, revisit our strategic plans, and then be prepared to adapt, because the only thing that we know is that this is going to change many times over before we get to the end of this. What success looks like, we talked earlier, most of us have taken care of those personal needs and are now looking to venture out beyond our homes, beyond our day-to-day routines of going for food, maybe going to get a couple of cold ones to have after a hard day. And then people are going to be looking for other things to do, especially when they can't do maybe what they had planned previously. That big family vacation to Disneyland is not going to happen this summer. but people are going to be venturing out first locally, so they will be exploring those neighboring communities. Maybe in the case of sport, they're going to be engaging in inter-community competitions if they are able to return to play, depending upon what that sport is. Sports like golf and tennis will be earlier back than those sports that involve any type of contact. Then people will be looking provincially, where communities will be competing potentially for provincial championships. Hopefully that happens in many of our summer sports, and then our winter sports will be well positioned and will have enough runway to hopefully be ready to return to play at the appropriate time. Then we know nationally, those national competitions from the national sport organizations will be coming back online. And then last, we know that international travel as well as international sport events will come back. National events like the Grey Cup, unfortunately, some of those won't happen this year. But we do know that they are going to come back and that they will be even bigger and better, because there will be that demand for people to be able to venture out and experience new things. We're all experiencing new things like webinars, web conferencing, and working from home or working remotely, unlike any of us thought we would be doing 3 months ago. So people's openness to be able to experience new things is going to change significantly, and we need to be ready to adapt to whatever that change looks like. When it comes down to it, sport tourism has always been a stabilizing force during times of volatility, whether it was 9/11, whether it was increased passport requirements, whether it was SARS, any other of the global pandemics, the downfall of the global economy in 2008, all of those things have impacted tourism in a significant way. Sport tourism has been able to be that stabilizing force, because we all know if we have children in sport, if they have a competition in another community, in another province, we know that that is core to our family budget and is not really discretionary spending, because that will be done within the family budget before that bucket list holiday that may not happen in 2020. When it comes down to sport tourism, we endorse that it be repeatable and that it be progressive. So this is a 10-step process, a sport tourism roadmap, and those 10 steps are intended to be consistent and repeatable and allow us to make good business decisions about what events bring the right impacts in our communities, to our businesses, to our province. So what we've been doing is we've been working to establish a sport tourism recovery task force over the past number of weeks, and it is inclusive of all regions of Canada. It is inclusive of host communities, national sport and multi-sport organizations, hotel partners, and other industry partners. We need to make sure that sport tourism and sport hosting's voice is heard as part of this public conversation that has been going on for the last 2.5 months. And next week is Tourism Week in Canada. Our task force is focused in 4 key areas: research, information gathering and assessment, policy, member support and government relations, funding, access for sport tourism and adaptive best practices, and then strategy, what that recovery strategy and action plan will look like. The timelines, we're not sure for our task force. We're going to focus on stabilization through the end of August. That will include our 4 key areas. The restart, which we know will be this fall, will likely include local and provincial only. We likely won't have the opportunity to go too far beyond those borders. And then once we get to that resiliency phase, that's when national and international and that new normal will become a reality. We do know that that will require some degree of stimulus, and that will need to come from at least the provincial and federal governments. We're not sure where our municipal governments will be at that stage. What you can do now, Canadian Sport Tourism Alliance, we have some free templates that you can use. So Sport Tourism Assessment Template, any communities in Canada can do that free assessment, receive a score, and we encourage you to do that, that assessment based on pre-COVID and post-COVID. Now is the time to be reviewing those hosting programs and strategic plans and revising any of those economic impact forecasts for the future. So at this point, I will stop presenting, and we will perhaps move to Jonathan's presentation and then take questions at the end of the session. I'd like to thank you on behalf of Canadian Sport Tourism Alliance and wish everybody the best of luck, and hopefully sport can be part of your solution in tourism.
Thanks. That was very informative, Grant, and I have a few questions lined up for you later as well. So thank you.
Great.
So next we have our very own Saskatchewan-based Jonathan Potts, who I'm sure many of us know. Jonathan is Executive Director of Marketing and Communications at Tourism Saskatchewan, and he's leading the development of the organization's marketing strategies in Canada, the United States, and overseas. And of course, readjusting those strategies, I'm quite certain, over the last month or so. Thanks again for joining us, Jonathan, and we're looking forward to your presentation.
Thank you, Verona, and thank you, Grant. That was indeed a very informative presentation. I really appreciated that. And I appreciate being able to speak to all of you today. It's a good opportunity. I recognize most of you are in the province, some of you are outside, but hopefully what I have to say is informative and helpful for all of you. So like Verona just said, I am in charge of my team producing strategies in the country, overseas, in the United States, etc. All of the plans that we were very proud of just a few months ago are basically out the window. And we're starting, or have started, and we're well into planning for recovery and resilience as it relates to the pandemic. So I'm going to speak a little bit about that today, some of the impacts it's had on the industry in Saskatchewan, and some of the things that we're doing to help our industry come out of this. So just a bit of background, tourism generates over $2 billion in annual visitor expenditures every year in Saskatchewan. This is going to be the first year in a long time where it does not do that. And we're going to see significant declines in spending this year. Whoops, sorry. There are over 3,000 tourism businesses, attractions, and events in the province. Like I said, COVID-19 is having a massive detrimental impact across the industry. In terms of events, we've seen over 800 that we know of, tourism-related events that have been canceled. Basically everything you can think of, up to and including the Grey Cup announcement yesterday. The majority of businesses and attractions are either still closed or operating in some form of a limited capacity. And we do know that many will close permanently, unfortunately. Not the majority by any stretch, but far more than we would like and far more than would be normal in a given year. As Grant has touched on, I think quite effectively, due to the health restrictions in the province, we know that nearly all our visitors to Saskatchewan in 2020, at least for the foreseeable future, will be our own provincial residents. So that again speaks to readjusting our marketing strategies. I just want to touch on the phases of the Reopen Saskatchewan plan that the government of Saskatchewan put forward. It's different province to province, obviously, and in some cases, some of the phases are almost flipped on their head in terms of what's opening first in different provinces. In phase 1 in Saskatchewan, starting May 4th to June 1st, provincial parks, golf courses, campgrounds, some outdoor recreation businesses have either opened or will be opening. In the case of provincial parks, overnight camping starts on June 1st. Retail stores and some other businesses were able to open on this past Tuesday. Phase 3 is one that there's lots of speculation about, and our Premier was fielding questions about the other day and hinted that June might be a possibility. That's when we'll see restaurants, food services, licensed establishments, starting to open again, and the size of public and private gatherings can increase by 5 to 15 people. Phase 4, there's no set date at all. That's where we'll see lots of recreation, entertainment facilities, museums, galleries, and other attractions start to open up. Lots of those are city-based attractions or community-based attractions. So that is still quite a ways in the future. And then phase 5, which potentially includes the lifting of long-term restrictions. Obviously, there's no set date for that. So we hired, many of you, especially in Saskatchewan, will know Stephen Johnson, who's a well-respected economist in the province. We hired him to look at some of the economic impacts of the COVID-19 crisis on the tourism industry. And the results were, frankly, not unexpected, but certainly painful to look at. So if you can follow my cursor, starting in 2011, this is just looking at overnight spending in all markets in Saskatchewan.
Jonathan, could I just interrupt for a second? I think we're having some slide challenges here, so I'll get Logan to help us.
Okay. Yeah, I can see they're jumping ahead.
So Logan, can you maybe assist us here?
Yeah, for sure. Jonathan, can you tell me which slide you'd like to be on right now?
The first one with the line chart. Sorry. So it was just one more.
Perfect.
Right there.
And if you want to take control of the slide deck again, go ahead.
Now I'm seeing, just so you're aware, I'm seeing the cover shot. I'm not seeing any subsequent slides, so I don't know about our attendees. But I'm just seeing the lead slide, economic impacts of COVID-19.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. And so Andrea's, yeah, we're seeing. Oh, okay.
I wonder if it's a bandwidth issue because it's a fairly large file.
No, it looks like there's maybe in the way that you're advancing the slides, it's just changing who is seeing what. I'm getting a button that says to presenter 3 or to presenter 4 instead of just everyone. Here, just a second.
Here we go. I see a pie chart. We're looking good.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Okay.
This is an organic experience. Okay, thank you.
and we'll see how this goes. Maybe what I'll do is I just won't take control until I want to advance the slide, and hopefully that'll keep it from advancing. Oh, that is not going to work. I apologize. Just one second.
No, it could be at our end. This is
okay.
Technology.
Hopefully, can you see a line chart now? Projected decline in overnight spending in the U.S. market?
Yes.
Okay, and now I'm going to go back to projected decline in overall spending in all markets. So I'll try and speak to this quickly, and hopefully the slide won't advance. So we've had slow and steady growth in our overnight visitor expenditures across the province, but you can see the blue line is what we had projected going forward, or what econometric models would have projected going forward. The red line is sort of our best case scenario this year going down. The next line is the average case scenario, and the gold line is the worst case scenario. So the projected decline from a spend of over 1.2 billion is from 400 million to 1.08 billion decline. So obviously that's huge. The cumulative effect will be much higher. So if you think going to the right on that chart, this is only 2020 right now, but these effects will linger for probably a few years. So we will have several years of diminished returns and diminished expenditures as a result of COVID-19. This is just a quick chart to speak to the ratio of Canadian travel expenditure in Saskatchewan. Roughly 2/3 of expenditure happens in spring and summer, so directly impacted by COVID-19 for sure. Oh my, I don't know why it wants to do this.
Sorry about that, Jonathan. Do you want to, I'll take control of the slides and maybe
that would be great.
For you?
Sure, and I'll just let you know, Logan, when I want to advance. So
Sure.
if you could go back, just one more slide ahead, please.
Of course.
Thank you very much. And I apologize, everyone.
No worries.
Okay, so if we could go to that pie chart. And right now I'm still, there we go. So as Grant mentioned, provincial residents across all Canadian provinces are going to be the first to return and spend again. In Saskatchewan's case, there's a bit of irony here, and it's irony that works in our favor, in that we've been working through our strategies to build our export markets over the past few years to try to get more spending coming from outside the province. The reason for that is we really rely on our provincial residents, but this is really still going ahead. Sorry, everyone. We really rely on our provincial residents to support our tourism industry. In this case, that turns out to be a good thing in the case of COVID-19, because we're going to need those residents to spend. That the only place they can travel is within Saskatchewan, and they will be the first to get out there and support our businesses, much like Grant alluded to. Right now, I can't see the presentation, Logan, unfortunately.
I'm bringing it back up for you, Jonathan.
Okay.
There's just, it seems to be advancing automatically, or perhaps someone is viewing the slideshow privately. I'm not 100% certain, sorry, this hasn't ever happened before.
Okay.
But I'm going to bring the presentation back up again, and then I'll take control of the slides and make sure private viewing is disabled.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so if we were just past that pie chart would be ideal. I can probably speak to what was coming next just while we wait. The U.S. market, I just wanted to touch on the fact that the U.S. market for Saskatchewan is not completely, but largely an outfitter-based market. So fishing and hunting. It is the most lucrative segment of the tourism industry for the province. The highest spend per visitor comes from our U.S. visitors. They unfortunately, with the border closed, and I think almost everyone is happy the border is closed right now. The U.S. market is not coming to Saskatchewan, and therefore our outfitters are, a lot of them will not open this year. Many will close permanently, and some are trying to salvage a year a little bit by getting Saskatchewan residents to come and use their services, but at a much reduced rate. Okay, I can see we're having problems displaying the content. That's all right. I'll just try and make do. It's maybe not as exciting not to look at the presentation, but I'll try and remember where my presentation was going, and I'll just maybe speak to some of the things that were coming next. We know that we've done a number of surveys on consumer behavior in Saskatchewan. Provincial residents right now are, if you were to look at their comfort level with travel in the province, they have the strongest degree of comfort traveling locally and regionally. And that also extends, much like the way the cases are distributed, the cases of COVID-19 are distributed in the province. There's the greatest comfort level traveling in the south, and then central regions, with Regina and Saskatoon lagging behind both the south and central regions in terms of comfort level traveling to. Then the northern region, or the northern grain belt, there's a bit of a significant drop off there in terms of comfort traveling. And then the far north, anything in the northern Saskatchewan Administrative District, there's a high degree of discomfort traveling to that area. We also asked people about a variety of activities. So We asked them if they had participated in things like camping, fishing, boating, hiking, bike riding. Hey, there we go. Thank you very much, Logan. This is the chart about where people are comfortable traveling. So you'll see they're extremely or somewhat comfortable traveling to the south, about 65% of people, and that ranges downwards to only 21% feeling comfortable traveling to the far north, and 41% not feeling comfortable at all traveling to the far north. So we know that there are outbreaks in the La Loche and Beauval areas, and that's probably what's driving those numbers. So Logan, if you're able, if you could advance the slide, that would be great. Wonderful. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. So I was just speaking to the fact that we had asked people about a range of activities that they have taken part in the last 2 years. So this is starting from a base of 100 with each of these activities. So for all the people who had golfed in the last 2 years, 49% are very likely to go out and golf this year, 35% are somewhat likely, and so on down the line. You'll see that outdoor activities where it's possible to socially distance oneself are pretty popular still. But things like city weekend getaways, for those of you that are in major centers, this is problematic, obviously. 38% of people are very likely, 30% are somewhat likely to do that, but roughly a third of people are not likely or not interested in taking city getaways, even if they had done so in the last 2 years. Renting outdoor equipment is even less of a possibility. So it could be kayaks, canoes, bikes, any number of outdoor recreational activities. People are not particularly comfortable doing those things. So you can see in there, as it relates to the communities or areas that you represent, that there are some specific challenges or specific opportunities for the tourism industry. And if we could advance again, Logan, please. So behavioral change, and we can just keep advancing, and I'll try and keep moving here. Thank you. So we asked people, how will COVID-19 affect your travel within the province in the next 3 months? Generally speaking, you'll see things like avoiding crowds, spending more time in nature, seeking activities where I can maintain social distancing, and so on, are the things that are top of mind for people. So this crisis has changed the mindset of travelers, and I know that Grant touched on that a little bit, but people are going to be looking for safe activities where they can socially distance, where they can be with their families and isolate or avoid others, or at least close contact with others. If you look fair ways down there, I will seek to fill my days with as many attractions and activities as possible. That probably is a bit of a loaded question, but not very many people are interested in doing that. There's 65% of people right at the bottom are either very likely or somewhat likely to cancel some of their travel plans. So obviously that impact on the industry is profound. And our challenge at Tourism Saskatchewan, I'm sure the challenge for some of you is to get people traveling again. I do want to point out one more number there, one more set of numbers. In the middle of the chart, it says avoid travel to major cities. 45% of people say they are very likely to do that, and 35% say they're somewhat likely to do that. So, for those in Regina and Saskatoon, there's a hill to climb to get people comfortable coming to the cities again. Okay, and if we could advance, please. So again, at this point in time, we asked people about their receptiveness or openness to welcoming people from elsewhere. So in terms of welcoming people from other communities near the respondents, about half of people say they would be comfortable just welcoming people from nearby communities. Another half are not. I'd welcome people from other parts of the province. About 40% are in that range. 60 are not, roughly. Welcoming people from other parts of Canada, less than 20% of Saskatchewan residents right now are receptive to welcoming people from other parts of Canada. So with the provincial health restrictions in place, that part of that may be people following the guidelines of Dr. Shahab and the Premier. But clearly there's a level of discomfort with having anyone come from across the provincial borders. And you can see the numbers for the United States and other countries. 8% of people would be welcoming, would be willing to welcome people from those places. Just a side note, Destination Canada, our federal partner, is doing similar research. They did find that when they broke these numbers down, that rural residents of Saskatchewan and Manitoba are the most likely to welcome people from the United States and overseas of anyone in Canada right now. And that's about 18 to 20% of rural residents in our two provinces would be willing to see people from the US or overseas. Okay, and Logan, if we could please go forward. Thank you. I do want to touch on quickly, given the profession that many of you are in, business travel. And this is business travel of all levels, and Destination Canada has been doing a lot of research. They have a subdivision, we went ahead there, a subdivision of called Business Events Canada. And thank you, Logan. And they have been touching base with business travel executives across the country and around the world. So some of this is on a large scale, but some of this is obviously relevant, or a lot of this is obviously relevant to even smaller business events like we might see here. So first thing is, in terms of recovery, smaller groups and corporate meetings will start traveling first. Digital components will be important for those in-person events. So maybe just jumping ahead to the third bullet, integration of virtual meeting spaces like we're doing today and face-to-face meetings are likely to become the standard. So there's going to be people that aren't comfortable traveling, some people who are, some people who need to, but business meetings are likely to be some sort of hybrid of what we're doing today and a traditional meeting face-to-face. Larger conference groups, and this is a bigger issue for the bigger cities. Larger conference groups will likely wait until there's a vaccine or effective treatments for COVID-19. So that could be a ways off, as we all know. Face-to-face meetings, this is a bit of a hopeful statement, but face-to-face meetings will continue to create memorable experiences and drive business forward. Most people, I think, would agree that meeting face-to-face, you build that camaraderie, you build trust, you build relationships better that way. So we expect there will still be a demand for that, but it may be, like I said, there may be a bit of a hybridization of how things happen from a business event standpoint. And if you're in the business of speaking to event organizers right now, no one's in the mood of being sold anything. But the critical thing that event organizers are communicating back through the research process is maintaining relationships with them, providing information about your communities, providing information about sanitation, about hotels, restaurants, other types of activities that can and will be open, and maybe about sanitization standards and all the things that are top of mind right now going forward. So, we're not going to see a lot of business travel anytime soon, but planning for the future, these are some of the key things to keep in mind. And if we could go forward, please, Logan, I'll try and speed up here. In terms of recovery and resiliency efforts from Tourism Saskatchewan, I will just run through a quick list, primarily of marketing activities that we'll be undertaking, but some other ones as well. So once again, if you could go forward, thank you. We've been working with our two agencies, a strategic agency called Destination Think out of Vancouver, who work worldwide in the tourism industry, as well as the Phoenix Group here in Regina. We are working from a strategic positioning statement that says, "Stay open, Saskatchewan." So that is not going to be the slogan that we're using in our marketing campaign this summer. We might use it sometimes. And sorry, Logan, if we could just go back one, please. Oh, I think we're still going forward. One more, please. Thank you. Stay Open Saskatchewan is a statement about how we want people to behave. It taps into locals' love for our experiences. It activates their sense of responsibility for individual responsibility and sort of community responsibility to establish and reinforce that we all need to work together to try to regain some of the freedom and some of the things that we have lost. That we need to, if we want to see businesses open, if we want to go to a restaurant, if we want to take a trip, we all need to practice social distancing and wash our hands and all those things that we're now doing all the time. So the stay open has sort of a dual meaning. So it's stay open to change, stay open to doing the things that we need to do, stay open to following health directives, and then in turn that will help our businesses stay open in Saskatchewan. So we're working on a platform to encourage travelers to open-mindedly reintroduce themselves to the province or see more of what they love. And it's an opportunity. It really is an opportunity to get that strong base of Saskatchewan travel moving around even more than it has been in the last number of years. So if we could please advance, Logan. Thank you. So our goals with our campaign are going to be to increase the confidence of Saskatchewan residents to travel and to receive visitors in their communities. And as you saw, there's a challenge with a lot of that moving forward. Oops, I'm sorry, we just went ahead one again. We need to educate residents on available travel experiences, restrictions, guidelines, and so on. So as I've been saying to our team, we're probably going to be doing, our marketing messages are going to be maybe 75% public service announcements and 25% marketing. It's really about education, trying to support our industry, but also support people's comfort levels in traveling and accepting travelers. We really want to support local business and encourage social responsibility. And we're going to be supporting destination marketing and management organizations because they've lost a lot of capacity. A lot of them rely on destination management funds, which are collected as a percentage of hotel receipts. And obviously no one's traveling now. In almost every community in the province, we're in single digit occupancy levels in hotels and often no guests at all. So hotels are suffering greatly, and the destination management organizations that rely on funding to come from them are suffering too. And yes, if we could please advance, Logan. So we're working on campaigns that will address that. We've got a lot of creative juices flowing on this, and our team and our agency are working hard on this. I mentioned we're going to really work on educating the public, but we want to grow resident pride and confidence in travel. And we're going to be developing a lot of content, a lot of it ourselves, but we're going to be working with many of the communities that you represent, some of the organizations. I saw some of the people that were on the call today, some of the organizations that you represent to help develop content that represents your area. And primarily, we're going to be focused on geo-targeting, so doing a lot of different content that is related to, if you're in Estevan, you'll probably see Southeast Saskatchewan content. If you're in Yorkton, East Central, and so on. Okay, and lastly, last slide, please, Logan. Just some additional support. So we have realized, and not that we wanted to, but realized a lot of savings in the last few months. We haven't been able to spend our budget like we had planned and like we wanted to support the industry. So I mentioned that events, for example, there are hundreds and hundreds of events that are canceled. There's dozens at least that we won't be supporting this year because they aren't happening, and we had planned to support with our budget. So we're taking the savings from different areas of our organization, and we will be using them to support probably not the operations, but some of the activities of DMOs, of outfitters, marketing activities, events probably for the future, content development, etc. So a lot of that is still being fleshed out, but we're getting close. It's been a moving target with not knowing what's going to reopen when exactly. So outfitters, for example, were intended to be closed quite a bit longer, but that date got opened up just this past week. So we are very adaptable, to use Grant's term, to tailoring our programs, our funding programs, to try to support the industry as they're able to open up. We have a new business hub on tourismsaskatchewan.com. We've always had an industry website, but it's, I think, gotten much more useful in the last little bit. And we're advancing that project very, very quickly to try and meet the needs of the industry, so they can be a one-stop shop, basically, for industry information. And we've got lots of ongoing efforts with Destination Canada, Tourism Industry Association of Canada, federal and provincial ministries to work on supports, policies, programs, and so forth, to try and help the tourism industry get through this difficult time and come out the other end well positioned for success. So my apologies for the skips in the presentation. It might be that there's a timing pattern set into the presentation that I accidentally pressed.
No apologies, John. That's great.
But,
it looks like I'm echoing. Maybe Logan, you can help with that. I'll ask Grant to come back on, and maybe we'll mute our video, Jonathan, as well. Just it could be some bandwidth issues here. So before I ask a question to Grant, thanks again, Jonathan. Good to hear about all these educational initiatives. It really makes sense. I like to stay open. A question for Jonathan. For those of us who are working in community, we were, prior to COVID, working on trying to create more experiences. I feel that's still the way to go, is it not? Still trying to build that experience?
It is absolutely the way to go. In the short term, it's, where we've been looking in the past, Verona, at building experiences maybe for international travelers or that export market. Mm-hmm. In the short term, by short term, I mean probably a year or two, it's going to be local or regional people that are going to be coming. But absolutely, experiential development is critical to the development of the industry.
Okay, all right. Well, look forward to and hearing any more stimulus that may be available for some of the operators in that sector. And then Grant, back to you. In terms of those templates you mentioned, are they available for free download from your site, or how can we access those?
Yes, they are available on the Canadian Sport Tourism Alliance website, which is, I will just bring up that. It is canadiansporttourism.com, and they are in the industry tools. If anybody has any challenges and would like to gain access to that or get the direct links, then I can be reached at consulting@canadiansporttourism.com.
Okay. What I'll do in our weekly newsletter next week, I'll push out an update from Tourism Saskatchewan and yourself with those links. And also, sure, that roadmap diagram you had looked very handy as well. Is that also a downloadable resource?
It is. It is.
Okay.
It's part of the sport tourism assessment template. So yes, we can make that available, and I can actually provide you with that in order to make it accessible on your website for everybody who's on the line.
Perfect. So we have a question here from Alan in Humboldt. She's asked, how do we help encourage businesses and tourism amenities to up the ante with respect to cleanliness and sterilization? She mentions, I think this is an area that has traditionally been weak in some of our rural areas. Many places are closing toilets, but toilets are still hugely important, as I found out yesterday on the highway for 10 hours. Yes. So any suggestions in response to Alan's question?
Sure, I'll take a stab at that one. I should have mentioned this. I apologize, Alan. Our Saskatchewan Tourism Education Council, STEC, is working with other industry associations to help bring forward best practices, protocols, and so on for industry to use. I can tell you again, from a consumer research standpoint, where cleanliness was always important, somewhat important to people, it is now primary in its importance. So businesses that don't put that at the forefront of what they're doing are going to suffer greatly. So yeah, when I mentioned that business hub, you will see on there, and certainly more information coming, information about workshops, programs, protocols, etc., for businesses to use as they go forward.
Great, thank you. And it seems like the message from both of you is, again, the first wave of reopening for sports events and tourism. It's that provincial marketplace and provinces next door. It was interesting that Grant pointed out that sports event attendance is not discretionary spending. So that's good to hear. I hadn't realized that. We can work with that, I think. But I do feel over the next year that we can make a lot of progress in that intra-province travel. And I look forward to working with both of you so we can promote that to our communities. And with that, I think we'll wrap up. I want to say thank you to both of you, Grant and Jonathan, and a reminder to our attendees, our next session next week is Recovery Strategies for Long-Term Resilience. We have 3 panelists. The well-known Michael Schumann from the United States, a well-known advocate for building local economies. Daryl Jewlett with Digital Main Street, who we would love to see here in Saskatchewan, and SEDA has been advocating for Digital Main Street. And Ken Coates with the Johnson Shoyama Graduate School of Public Policy to provide some input on what he thinks we should be doing here in Saskatchewan to reopen. So I look forward to most of you joining us next week. Thanks again, Jonathan and Grant, and we'll keep in touch.
Thank you, everyone.
Take care. Alrighty.
Thank you.